example, the founder of the California Association of Bilingual Educators now admits that he was wrong for 30 years, that bilingual education does not work, that English immersion does work. The president of the State Board of Education who opposed the initiative now admits he was wrong, and in fact he donated money to help get a similar initiative on the Massachusetts ballot.
All right, Tim, you can rebut that, and then we'll take a break.
I don't think I've heard so many statistics since Ross Perot was running for president. I think it's real simple. This guy and his cohorts in California 4 years ago came to the California people and said, we need to teach kids to speak English, okay? And that means we're going to take kids that don't speak English, we're going to move them into regular programs. They haven't done that. As of the last test year, and this is a fact and it's simple, you can go straight to the State Board of Education and see the test results. They test the kids that didn't speak English last year, and they test them to see if they learned to speak English and through Mr. Unz's program, which he claims he teaches kids in 1 year. 90+% failure rate. Kids aren't moving out of that. They're not learning to speak English.
All right, 2 points. If it's such a failure, why don't California voters vote it out? And secondly, these standardized tests, including the MCAS in Massachusetts, don't really measure English proficiency, do they?
I'll address two things here, okay? One is that Mr. Unz is running as far away from California as he can get right now, as every politician is running away from him. The only guy in the gubernatorial race that, by the way, had the support of the President of the United States, just had was one guy who had the support of the President of the United States that supported the existing situation in California, just got his hat handed to him. The State Board of Education is dismantling the program as quickly as possible. People are very unhappy with it. It's a total disaster.
All right, quick response, Ron, and we'll take a break.
Well, then why would the New York Times have run a national front-page lead story touting the tremendous success of the initiative in California? There are hundreds of other news articles in every major newspaper in California, most of the national media, television shows. Every investigative journalist who's looked at the results talks about the dramatic success. And again, we persuaded the founder of the California Association of Bilingual Educators. I'm afraid my debating partner here is severely misinformed.
But is the Board of Education trying to dismantle the program that was put into effect?
In Mr. Unz's own words, he stated that.
What has happened is the State Board of Education, under continual lobbying pressure from the bilingual advocates, had actually made some serious, they'd certainly done some proposed some questionable regulations. Once suddenly the light of day was shined on that and the media found out what they were doing because I informed the media, they've now completely backed off. In fact, the executive director of the State Board has resigned over that issue.
All right, got to hold you both here. We're going to take a break, come back to continue our discussion on bilingual education. Back with my guest to continue our discussion on bilingual education. Ron, in this morning's Boston Globe on the op-ed page, a professor from the Harvard Graduate School of Education said that in California 3 years later, the reclassification rate remains at less than 10%, and that the results that you talk about have been distorted.
That's the whole thing. You see, classification methodology is very doubtful in that what we're talking about is students are classified as not knowing English if they're below the 40th percentile on standardized tests. Now, the truth is 40% of all students are below the 40th percentile. Furthermore, in California and most other states, school districts are actually paid more money for every student who stays classified as not knowing English. If you're a parent and your student's test scores double or even triple on standardized test scores, I think that's what you care about rather than whether your student is classified as limited English proficient or not. What we've done is double the test scores.
I think what parents care about is their kids learning English, and I think you dance around it a lot. The test scores indicate under your program they don't. It's a failure.
Well, if they're doing well on all the tests given in English, I think they know English.
They're actually not. They're actually not.
I'm afraid you're really misinformed.
How could we be such confusion over tests?
I have the data right here. I can pass it on.
Well, the only thing I could say is that I'm not sure what this gentleman's doing here. There's an initiative in Massachusetts that's going to cost Massachusetts taxpayers tens of millions of dollars to implement. It's going to close down schools such as my son's. We can't even find somebody from Massachusetts to even speak for this initiative. It's kind of interesting to me. I think that we need to look long and hard at this. I think the legislatures here in Massachusetts are doing a great job in coming up with some solutions so we continue to make sure that we have a success rate well ahead of California in making sure kids speak English. And
are you afraid that opponents of this law will pass that ballot question?
Of the initiative?
that voters will pass
What
this
I'm concerned
ballot
about
initiative?
is that he's got a simple message, and that is, you know, we need to get these kids off the street and teach them English. Not people don't spend enough time with that. Okay, they're going to vote whatever they think in 30 seconds in the ballot box without really knowing what they're getting into, without knowing that this is going to cost tens of millions of dollars, without knowing for the first time in 300 years of the state's history, we're putting a law in the books that will call for teachers to be personally sued for what they teach in the classroom.
Right.
Now, I think that's despicable.
Ron, do you predict this is going to pass the ballot
I
initiative?
think there's a very good chance it'll pass because the people of Massachusetts think that children should be taught English. Remember, what we're talking about are immigrant children. Now, I don't know your background, but I would suspect that you don't come from an immigrant background based on your name and the fact that you can speak English.
I think we're
what
talking
we're talking
about
about
the
is
same
something
kids that
to
don't know
help
how to speak
immigrant
English, yeah.
children in Massachusetts. This law will help those children. And to be honest,
Well, then why do they have a 93% failure rate in
You're
California?
making up those
No, I
figures.
am
You're
not.
making them
Anybody,
up.
Ron, anybody can go on the web and see the facts, okay? You can talk all you want to, but the facts are right there.
Look,
93% failure
The
rate.
educational reform bill signed by President Bush provides up to 3 years of bilingual education. So won't that cost school districts money?
Absolutely. People on both sides of the aisle, President Bush, Senator Kennedy here in the state, have endorsed a wide variety of programs, exactly like we have here in the state already.
The truth is the vast majority of politicians are very nervous to deal with the issue of bilingual education, and that's why every effort to reform or modify Massachusetts' mandatory bilingual education law has failed in 15 years. The politicians are scared of the issue. Only the voters can change this law and
You know,
change
Mr.
it.
Jones, here's what I would
All right,
suggest. You ought to
final
have
word.
some kids and become a parent, come here to the state, and maybe you won't be quite so cynical about the politicians and teachers in our state.
All right,
Okay?
I wish we had more time. Thank you both for a very spirited discussion. Thanks to Ron Unz and Tim Duncan. Coming up, another ballot issue for Massachusetts.